Morning guys, welcome back to Vision Academy. So today I'll be telling about class 10, the remaining three chapters, 3, 4 and 5. I'm coming to chapter 5 guys, it talks about consumer rights and you won't find much important fodder for that from that particular chapter. So you can just skip chapter 5 of class 10. Alright, so coming especially to Consumer Protection Act 1986, I'll be discussing that when I speak about mainstream. Why? Because Consumer Protection Act 1986 doesn't have any relevance now, and if some items appear or if some item appears in the newspaper, you can just access it anytime. Okay, so I'll be dealing here. I'll be uploading a separate article on Consumer Protection Act 1986. By just looking or by just reading those 2 or 3 pages, you will be having well idea about what the provisions in that. Since it's normal act, there will be a hell set of rules in that, so you just have to memorize that, right? Nothing apart else from that from this chapter. And today we'll be seeing about chapter 3 and 4, and this will complete your class 10 NCERT. I hope all of you are revising very often. So please keep revising the slides. That's why even I am putting the slides chapter wise so that all your key points will be on the slides, and complete the particular chapter, the class, and then complete the particular chapter of NCERT that day itself so that it remains in your brain forever. Okay, so we'll move on to the session. And before that, confirm me, is my screen visible? Alright. So guys, we'll move on to the chapters, chapter 3 and chapter 4, and it is by the name Money and Credit. If you see the flow of chapters, guys, you will see a definite flow. Initially in class 9, we spoke about small issues like factors of production, then basically how a village economy looks like. Then as I've told you, in class 10th and class level, class 10th and class 11th, it's all about the development versus the growth, like what are those parameters and all. Okay. So yesterday we spoke about how growth is measured purely in terms of economic values and development how it is measured qualitatively, and what are the various reports. And coming to the first part again, that is growth part. First, we should know how we have seen like how growth is measured, like in terms of GDP, gross domestic product, or per capita income. And if it comes to development part, then whether human development report or something. And so, Jennifer, I think this one's finished. Go there and speak. Okay, so now we'll move in deep into how an economy, and in economy how the production is created, and that too how money is created, as well as what is the demand, how the demand for money arises, as well as how the supply of money is done in economy. So first we'll be seeing about how money was initially came into existence. Then we'll see from where the demand for money arises, and we'll see in market how the money is supplied. Coming to the first part, first of all, how money has come into existence. As you would have read in your previous classes or in your childhood or something, initially the creation of money, the existence of money has come in after three evolutions. First, what was the initial stage of a transaction? Okay, first initially people used to prefer barter system. Okay, in barter system is nothing but suppose you have some 1 quintal of grains. Okay, so you will exchange that 1 quintal of grains to other things what you want to have. Since suppose out of 1 quintal of grain, suppose you have 1 quintal of rice and you want to exchange it with 1 quintal of wheat. So you should find a person who is having 1 quintal of wheat at that time when the need for 1 quintal of wheat arises for you, so that you can exchange in between you. That was known as barter system. And what was the problem is that first of all the need should match. Okay, so your need, a person A's need should match with person's need, that is B's need, and at the right time. So that's the term known as double coincidence of wants. Okay, so where a person A will be having one want and the person B will be having another one, and that wants should get coincided for the barter system to take place. All right. Now coming to evaluation of money, the evaluation of money eliminated this need for double coincidence of wants. Why? Because just for purchasing one quintal of wheat, you don't have to have 1 quintal of rice or whatever need he has. You don't have to have that. You can just exchange that good with the money you have. So initially, the double coincidence of wants, what it was in barter system, was eliminated by the use of money, and that's how money has come into existence. Why? Because instead of exchange of goods, money acts as intermediate in the exchange process. It is called as medium of exchange. Why? Because with the help of money only, you are able to exchange the things or buy or sell the things So money is known as medium of things. Okay. Now we'll move on to the old system, that is barter system. What used to happen in barter system? The cost of transaction was very high. Okay. Why? Because always there used to be some imbalance between person A wants and person B wants, because the wants were not balanced as well as the value of the goods were also not balanced. Because of that, cost of transaction was also very high. Why? Because sometimes if you are in dire need of getting one quantity or 1 quintal of wheat, and in return if that person demands 2 quintal of rice instead, so that 1 quintal of wheat became very costly for you. So that is what is meant by cost of transaction, which was very high in the case of barter system. Okay, and one more problem is that even the storage of perishable commodities, you know what is meant by perishable commodities like fruits, vegetables, meat, or whatever, they'll get spoiled if they got or if they get stored for the long term. Okay, even the storage of perishable commodities is difficult. Okay, in case of barter system, because of the storage difficulties, again, depending irrespective of the need, the cost of transaction used to take place, and there was never a balance between needs and wants. Okay, and there was this serious problem of perishable commodities, the chance of getting them spoiled in case of barter system. Okay, and what they used to use in barter system, Indians, particularly Indians, used grains and cattle as money in barter system. They used to exchange grains and cattle. Okay, so this happened initially. The barter system in the form of goods exchange happened. Then there came the use of metallic coins. Okay, metallic coins like gold, silver, copper coins. That's why I told you what was the role of money after barter system. Forms of money may be different. Why? Because initially forms of money was in terms of metallic coins. Then it went to paper coins or paper currency. Then nowadays it's going to even virtual currencies, that is cryptocurrency. Oh, because okay, the forms of money may differ, but the purpose of money remains the same. Okay, it reduces the transaction cost compared to barter system, as well as it's easy to exchange goods with money, like buying and selling. So initially, before the introduction of money, people used to use grains and cattle as money. Thereafter, there came the use of metallic coins, okay, like gold coins, silver coins, and copper coins, which continued well till the last century. Okay, now we'll see how the coins came into existence. I'll tell you, even since your history class are not done yet, I didn't explain about this in much detail. If you start your history classes, in there will be many kingdoms, right? In ancient history and medieval history. So just give a thought how that trade was taking place during ancient times. Obviously, there has to be some medium of exchange. Initially, it was barter. Then I told you about metallic coins, right? And these metallic coins, which were used as medium of exchange, like gold coins or silver coins, they used to contain the images of the kings which punched them. We call them as punched coins, where silver or gold was used. So they used to contain the images of kings, images of queens, and the images of kingdom which punched them. And with the use of those coins, the transaction used to take place. Okay, so first, yeah, you should remember barter system, and it was mainly grains and cattle which was used. Then later it transformed to metallic coins, which consists of gold, silver, and copper coins, which were issued by different kingdoms in different timelines of history. Okay, now we'll see exactly the evolutions and types of money. First, as I've told you, commodity money was used. Soon after barter system, first thing came as commodity money, like iron nails, bear pearls, cocoa beans, whale teeth, gold nuggets. These are known as commodity money. So these terms you remember. Soon after the barter system, in barter system, as you have seen in India, mainly only what used to take place, transaction, grains, and animal or cattle was used as money. Or in the barter system, they were used as goods in return for exchange. Now, then commodity money came. In commodity money, iron nails, beard pearls, cocoa beans, whale teeth, gold nuggets, these were also used. Then after commodity money, then metallic money has come into existence. As I've told you, these were issued by traders and kings, stamped their marks on gold nuggets for uniformity and trust. Suppose there was a king or Kanwas or Guptas. Why Guptas are very important? Because they used largest number of gold coins in Indian history. Okay, so the Guptas used to print the images of the kings on backside of the coin, so that they would be having trust for their currency in their entire anywhere in their entire territorial kingdom. Okay, that was the purpose. So in metallic money, this was issued by traders and kings with their stamped marks. And now once metallic money was done with, next in the evolution came known as paper money, or what we call it as fiat money. So this very much term is important for which type of money we call it as fiat money. This is very much important to learn. Okay, fiat money is nothing but which is issued under the warrant or under the command that it will be legally binding. Okay, I'll tell you simple. Suppose you take 100 rupees note. Okay, you take 100 rupees note to a shop to get your groceries. Okay, so that shopkeeper will accept this 100 rupees. Why? Because it has got some legal sanctity. Okay, and suppose the same shopkeeper, even if he takes this 100 rupees to pay government bills or to get deposited in bank, they will accept this. Why? Because this got a legal sanctity from the government and from the RBI, whichever is issuing it. So the type of money which has got this legally binding command, that suppose if you go to grocery shop and he is taking 100 rupees, that is a legally binding command that you can buy this certain amount of groceries for this note of 100 rupees. So that type of money we call it as fiat money, which has got legally binding command that you can anywhere they can be accepted, they can be deposited, or they can be paid to the government. Okay, that we call it as fiat money. And this fiat money, irrespective of whatever or which type of transaction it is used in, it is accepted in all those type of transactions. Okay, since you give to a shopkeeper, or you pay your electricity bill, or you deposit in your bank, or you give it as money to some people as money lender, so in any type of transaction you can use that. Okay, so the fiat money, which has got first of all legally binding command, and this fiat money is used in any type of transactions, there is no restriction for a transaction, then that is known as legal tender. Okay, the fiat money which can be used in any type of transaction, we call it as legal tender. Just remember this. So in general, what is fiat money? Whatever the currency issued by RBI or the government, or whatever the coins you are using in your day-to-day life, they are known as fiat money. Why? Because they got some legal command and they can use in any type of transaction, thus becoming a legal tender. Okay, so first commodity money, then metallic money, then paper money or fiat money. Okay, now coming to see, if you see the money, you have coins as well as notes. Okay, coins as well as notes. Now first, who issues coins, like who prints coins and who give you notes. Okay, this is very much important basic bit. It was even previous year UPC question as well. All coins are issued by government. Okay, all coins up to rupees 1000 coin, and along with these coins, rupees, only rupees one note. Okay, any coin of value up to 1000 and only 1 rupee note are issued by government. Okay, are issued by government under Coinage Act, issued by governor under Coinage Act. Just remember this: coins of any value up to rupees 1000 is issued by government under Coinage Act. Okay, now coming to currency notes. So apart from 1 rupee currency note, there are 10 rupee currency note, 20 rupees currency notes, 30 rupees currency note, right? So if you observe your daily currency note, you will find the signature of governor on that, right? If you have not observed that much keenly, just take any rupees note today and observe what are the features in that. Then how many languages there is written on that note. In how many languages about the value is written on the note. Then what is the serial number in that. Then what is the symbol printed on that note. Okay. Then normally in any note other than rupees one note, that will contain the signature of RBI governor. This is very much important. Every note other than one rupee note will be having the signature of RBI governor, and only 1 rupee note, since it is issued by government and not by RBI, it will be having the signature of finance secretary. This is very much important. It will have the signature of finance secretary, and the power to issue coins was given to government under Coinage Act. Hope this is clear. Now we'll go on to the next one. Now coming to currency notes. Rupees 1 currency note is issued by government. Now coming to various all other currency notes, they are issued by RBI. This is very much important. Coins are issued by government, and notes other than 1 rupee note are issued by RBI. Okay, and that note of any value contains the signature of governor. Presently, rupees 10 note to rupees 2000. 10 note to rupees 2000. As I've told you, the government has the power to issue coins under Coinage Act, and the RBI has power to issue currency notes under RBI Act. So complete RBI Act I will be explaining you when we learn about banking system in India. As of now, stick to this NCRT and just remember this: under RBI Act, RBI was given power to issue currency notes. Now coming to the task for you for today. I mean, these are the questions not asked by UPSC, but they have the probability of being asked in your state commissions. What is the task? Take 10 rupee note, then take 20 rupee, okay, then take 50, as well as all type of value of notes, or just have the images of that and see to it what are all the features on that note, in how many languages the value of the note is written. As of now, in 17 languages. Mind, this is very much important key. On any note you take, in 17 languages they would have written about the value of that note, because 20 rupees will be written as 20 rupees in English, then 20 rupees will be written as in Hindi, 20 rupees will be written in Sanskrit. In same way, in 17 languages, the face value of that particular currency will be written, and it will be having the signature of governor. Then apart from that, your task for today is 10 rupees in 10 rupees note is of which color, 20 rupees note is of which color, and it contains what images. This is very much important. It contains what images. Why? Because on the face of 200 note, you will be having the image of Rani Ki Vav. Okay. Then on 10 rupees note, you will be having the image of Red Fort. Likewise, in each of all these notes, there will be some image printed on the note. So task for today is kindly go through all the notes and see what are the images on that, okay, and what is the color of that particular note. It is important for your state commission as well as your banking exam. Okay, so coming back to this lecture, so coins are issued by government, then currency notes are issued by RBI. Hope is clear. Okay, now coming to, we have seen the evolution of money, then who issues money, and now coming to the creation of money. Coming to the concept of creation of money. See, you will go to bank, you will be applying for loan, and to issue loan for you, they will be asking some kind of security, right? So either you have to give your home documents or you have to give your land documents, like that. So that particular type of security or is an asset which you use or which you guarantee, you put as guarantee for the credit issuing body, and that is known as collateral. Remember this term, we don't use the word security, we use the word collateral. It's very much important. Okay, so collateral is an asset that the borrower owns, such as land, building, that may be livestock or vehicle or deposits with the banks, and you use this collateral as a guarantee that you won't default on your loan when you're applying for loan or to the lender, okay, until your loan is repaid. So that term is known as collateral. You have to remember this term, very much important. Okay. And coming to one more important keyword, what is the terms of credit? Okay, terms of credit is nothing but the conditions under which you agree for taking the loan as well as you agree for repaying the loan on time. That is the interest rate, then the guarantee what you put in the form of collateral, and various other document what will be asked by the lending body or lending person, and how you promise to return that amount, the mode of payment you promise to return. These all conditions forms a keyword known as terms of credit. Okay, so remember this, it is known as terms of credit, then collateral. Okay, now we'll move on to the next one. First we have seen evolution of money. Okay, then we have seen to get money or who issues money in a country or particularly in India, and now we'll see the dynamics of demand and supply of money. Okay, how money is created? It is created by printing of government as well as by printing of RBI. Okay, so they'll print the money, no issue. But this money will be released into the market, and this market forms a key platform. Okay, forms a key platform for this phenomenon of demand and supply of money. So we will see how demand for money in a market is created and how supply of money is met for that particular demand. Okay, so coming to the demand, why need for money arises? Demand is nothing but need for money. So we'll see why need for money arises. It arises mainly for three purposes. What are those purposes? First thing, transaction motive or purpose, like you need to buy stuff, you need to go for shopping, you need to pay your bills. All this is known as transaction. So first thing, The need for money arises because you need money for transacting. So first purpose is transaction purpose. Next, precautionary purpose. So why you need for precautionary purpose? Take for example this COVID-19, and soon after the lockdown announced, people will be very cautious that they will be having their money in the form of savings so that to meet emergency situations like health or for education purpose or for anything. Okay, so you will keep for to meeting any unwarranted or emergency wants, that is known as precautionary purpose. As a precaution, keeping in mind your future demand may arise, you will keep some part of the money as savings. Okay, so that is one more purpose. First thing, for transaction purpose you need money, and for next thing, for precautionary purpose you need money. And third thing, speculative purpose, which we also known as asset demand purpose. So what is the speculative purpose as an asset demand? Suppose you are earning well enough, some part of it you will transact for your needs, some part of it you will store for meeting emergency needs, and some part of it will keep an eye for investment. That is, you want to buy a land or you want to buy home, or you are waiting for the gold or something, gold prices to get low so that you can invest in gold or invest in land. So first thing for transaction purpose, then for meeting your emergency needs, then for creation of assets. For creating assets also you need money. Okay, so coming to demand of money, money is mainly demanded for these three purposes. And in the next slide, we will see to meet these three demands of money, how supply of money is carried out in an economy. Okay, now we'll move on to the next dynamic, that is money supply. Before clearly explaining about money supply, I want you to understand some basic terms. For example, time liabilities of a bank and demand liabilities of a bank. So what is time liability or what is demand liability? For example, you went for fixed deposit in a bank. Okay, 1 second, hold on guys. Hold on guys for 2 minutes. Zolo, YOLO space. Ask him, we'll do that by tomorrow evening. Since the concerned person has not yet come to institute, we'll do it by tomorrow evening. Okay guys, so we'll just move on. As I've told you, coming to the category of money supply, there should be two criteria or two key terms. First thing, coming to time liabilities of a bank. I was telling you about this fixed deposit, right? Okay, so you go to a bank, you deposit some 5 lakhs of rupees, and fixed deposit nothing but you can't just take out the money whenever you wish. You can take out, but only under terms and conditions of the government, the concerned bank, and provided you even pay huge amount of interest. Okay, so you went for a bank to deposit a huge amount of money as a fixed deposit for 3 years, let us suppose. So bank don't have to return you your money within the time gap of 3 years because it is under fixed deposit. So it has time. So first, before going to even, I'll tell you about basic two terms: what is liability or what is an asset. Asset is nothing but whatever you own. Suppose you own a land, that is asset for you. And liability is you took a loan from a bank, that is a liability for you because you have to return it in the near or far future. Asset is nothing but whatever you don't have to return, and liability is nothing but whatever you have to return. So that's the difference between asset and liability. Okay, now coming to time liabilities of a bank. Fixed deposit is time liability because it don't have to repay to the depositor. Okay, it don't have to repay to the depositor within normal time. Okay, it can repay to the depositor within some time of 3 years. So it has got time, that is time liability. It has to repay, and that is why it is a liability, and there is particular time mentioned for repayment, that is known as time liability. So fixed deposit time liability, again recurring deposit is also a time liability. Then there is something known as staff security deposit. Okay, where the staff in the banking sector, they'll be depositing in the bank for some years of time. They'll be recurring. Suppose every month they'll be depositing 5,000 for 25 years, so that they'll be getting lump sum amount after 25 years. And this also they don't need to pay in between. That's why even staff security deposits are under time liabilities of a bank. So to explain in brief, bank legally not required to pay customer before maturity. Okay. So before the maturity of 3 years, in this case, bank don't have to pay to the customer, but can pay in certain circumstances after deducting penalty or interest. So that is in only certain circumstances. Otherwise, taken the majority fixed deposit, it's a time liability of a bank. Okay. Now, what a demand liability is? Suppose the same 5 lakhs you are putting normally in your savings account, and whenever you wish to withdraw, you can withdraw from ATM, or whenever you just take a check for a bank, they have to give you that amount on the day. So it is nothing but the demand liability of a time where the bank won't have any time, and whenever you request or whenever you demand for money, they have to pay then and there itself. That is demand liability without any maturity period. So demand liabilities are different and time liabilities are different. And money supply totally can be put in the banking system under these two headings. One is time liabilities of a bank and demand liabilities of a bank. So under demand liabilities, what all comes? First thing, current account. What is current account? You can go for irrespective number of transactions in a day. Okay, current account, then savings account, then demand draft, then overdue balance in fixed deposit. That fixed deposits are time liability, but overdue balance comes under demand liability. Then there will be unclaimed deposits. Okay, this all comes under demand liabilities of a bank. And this is the basic difference between time liabilities of a bank and demand liabilities of a bank. Please have this clarity on current and savings account and what are time liabilities and demand liabilities, because these terms will haunt you in your entire account of preparation with respect to banking sector. Okay, so I hope you are clear with that. Now we'll move on to the next one. Now we have seen supply of money under banking sector falls under mainly those two, demand liabilities of money and time liabilities of money. Now we'll take entire market into picture. Okay, we'll take entire market into picture and we'll see how this supply of money is done. For that, we will be classifying supply of money into M1 and M2. Okay, M1 and M2, mind you, this is known as narrow money. Okay, narrow money. Why this also? We'll get a clarity after this slide. Then there is something known as M3 and M4. Okay, M3 and M4, which is known as broad money. Okay, M1 and M2 is known as narrow money, and M3, M4 is known as broad money. So first of all, what does M1 include? So under the supply dynamics in the stage of M1 or as a entity M1, what does M1 include? M1 includes currency with the public, that may be notes, that may be coins, currency with the public, and demand deposit in all banks. So what comes under demand deposit in the previous slide? Current account, savings account, demand draft and all. So M1 includes currency with the public and demand deposits in all banks. Okay. Mind you, the keyword demand deposits, not time deposit, only demand deposits. Okay. So M1, now you understand why it's called as narrow money. Why? Because we are not considering time money or any other dimensions. We are only going for demand deposits as well as currency with the public. So, and this, suppose take for example, currency with the public or demand deposits in all banks, this comes under M1. Apart from this, other deposits with the RBI. RBI will be having various deposits that may be from banks or that may be from various government agencies and all. Okay. So this comes under narrow money. Why? Because why it is narrow money? Because this is the money which has got or which will be used very often. Okay, that is known as narrow money. Now, what is excluded under this? Okay, India's deposits with the international organizations like IMF, World Bank, foreign government, these are excluded in the dynamics of money supply. And interbank deposits. This term is very important. Normally, what transaction takes place in a government or in a banks or not government bank? Borrowing and lending, where people will borrow the money from the bank as well as people will lend. So lending of the banks will be in the form of loans, and borrowing or depositing by the people will be in the form of borrowings by the bank will be in the form of deposits. Okay, deposits by the bank. And now, apart from these people borrowing and taking loans from the banks, banks also will be depositing some amount of their money in various other banks. Take for example, Canara Bank. Okay, it will also be depositing some part of this money in HDFC Bank as well. So M1 and narrow money does not include interbank deposits, as well as it does not include India's deposits with IMF, World Bank, foreign government. This was one of the important previous bits. It was asked nearly for 10 times in UPSC. So what comes under M1 and what does not come under M1? Now we'll move on to the next criteria, M2. So what is this M2? M2 is M1. What is M1? That is this thing. Currency with the public, demand deposits in the bank and other deposits are there. So M2 is equal to M1 plus post office bank savings. This is very much important. Apart from banks where borrowing or depositing and withdrawal take place, even people go for post office, right, where they will be going for savings as well as they will be having post office savings account. They will be depositing money as well as withdrawing money. So this M2 is nothing but M2 is equal to M1 plus post office bank savings. And similar to regular banks, post office also have current account, savings account, as well as time liabilities like fixed deposits. So again, even for this M2 purpose, we only consider demand deposits. Okay, demand deposits. We does not consider time deposits with the post office. So in M1 also we don't consider time deposits. In M2 also, even with respect to post office, we only consider demand deposits by the people. Alright. So M3 is equal to M1 plus post office bank savings. Now M3 we call it as broad money. Okay, M3 is known as broad money. And now why they are called as narrow and broad money? As you have seen M1 and M2, you have seen that this time liabilities of a bank or time deposits of the bank or time deposits of post offices are not included, right? So they are known as narrow money. And one more thing is that they will be used more often. This narrow money has got high velocity and they will be used more money more often, and this is how supply of money is met because of M1 and M2. Okay, now coming to M3, it is also known as money aggregate. So in an economy, or coming to the case of India, under what basis supply of money is determined? How we know that this much amount of money is available in economy? This is done with respect to of M3 broad money. So it's not M1 and M2 which is used for estimating the supply of money in Indian economy. It is M3 or broad money which is used as a variable, which is used as a particular concept which is used to determine the total supply of money in the Indian economy, or it is also known as money aggregate. Now what this M3 contains? M3 contains M1. Mind it. It is very much important. This will make you to get confused while answering MCQs. M3 is not M2 plus time deposits. M3 is only M1. Okay, going back to what is M1 again, this thing. So M3 is equal to M1 plus. Now time deposits with the commercial banks. What are the time deposits? As I've told you, as I've told you in the previous slide, difference between time deposits and demand deposits. Time deposits contains fixed deposits, recurring deposits as well. Okay, so time deposits is nothing but fixed deposits and recurring deposits. So M3 is that M1 plus time deposits with the commercial banks. But don't get confused. M3 is not M2. M3 is M1 plus time deposits with the commercial banks. Now what is M4? As the same done is M2. M4 is nothing but M3 plus total post office deposits. Why? Because previously we have not considered time deposits, right? But in this case M4 is equal to M3 plus even total post office deposits. Okay. But what it excludes? It excludes national savings certificate. Okay, what is national savings certificate? This is one type of saving instrument available to the people of India. That is, if you invest some amount of money in this national savings certificate, or if you some amount of money, you will be given a certificate where every year interest will be accrued to that particular certificate, and at the end of agreed 3 years or 5 years, your money with interest will be returned for you. Okay, so to encourage more savings in terms of bank savings going less or people are not going to save, then government gives or issues this type of investment or saving options for the people, that is known as national savings certificate. And these type of saving certificates are excluded from calculating money supply in an economy. Why? Because they are only used for a specific purpose. So we should not include that while calculating overall money supply in an economy. So this is very much important. Normally when someone asks you how supply of money is determined in the Indian economy, it is determined with the help of M3, which is known as broad money or aggregate money, which includes M1 plus time deposits with the commercial banks. That is okay. Now we'll move to the next one. Order. So coming to order, what is this velocity? I mean, what is this? There is something known as money supply, right? So in money supply, which has got more velocity or which has got more liquidity, liquidity is nothing but whenever you can use that money for your transaction purpose without any hindrances. So what is this liquid money? So we'll now order this money supply, that is M1, M2, M3 or M4 in terms of their liquidity level. Okay, so liquidity is nothing but how easily, okay, how easily we can convert that money for transaction purpose. Okay, how easily we can convert that money for transaction purpose. So coming to the order of liquidity, as I've told you, since M1 contains only the currency with the public as well as demand deposits, okay, since M1 contains the currency with the public and only demand deposits, these can be used for all the liquidity purposes, okay. So hence M1 would be easily available with the people in the form of currency as well as demand deposits. Demand deposits are nothing but where by the demand, increment demand of the soon demand of the people will be issued with the money, and that money will be done into circulation. So in terms of liquidity purposes, M1 is more liquid, then M2 is less liquid than that, then M3 is less liquid. Why? Because M3 contains time deposits with the banks, and those time deposits are only redeemable after certain fixed time period of whether 3 or 5 years. Okay. So M1 is more liquid, then M2 is more liquid than that, then M3 is less liquid, then M4 is more less liquid than that. Out of which the most liquid one is M1. But to calculate aggregate monetary resources or overall supply in economy, we use M3 as I told you in the previous slide. In money supplied, again as a caution, in money supply we will only counting net demand and net time deposits. That is only public deposits with the bank. The interbank deposits, that is which a commercial bank holds in other commercial banks, is not counted when you are taking total money supply into consideration. Okay, these things are not counted. In the previous slide I have told you, again I am telling, these interbank deposits are not counted. Okay, so in total, coming to the order of liquidity, M1 is more liquid, then M2 is less liquid, then M3 is much more less liquid, then M4 is much more less liquid. Okay, M1 is the most liquid, and M3 we call it as aggregate monetary resources, which we use for calculating overall supply in the economy. So this order is very much important. Since it was asked many times in previous year, you should know which is liquid. And when someone asks you what is the measure, what is the criteria by which all the supply of money is measured, that is M3, and which is nothing but M1 plus time deposits with the commercial banks. Okay, hope this is clear. This has to be clear for you, and you have to remember this for long term. Now coming to the term, what is velocity of money? First, I have told you from what demand of money arises. Then I have told you how supply of money is met, or how we calculate the overall supply of money in an economy. Okay. Then why this supply of money is done? This supply of money is done to meet out the demand for money. Okay. And the extent or the speed at which this supply of money is going to meet the demand is known as velocity of money. And how this is measured? Velocity is nothing but the average number of times money passes from one hand to another. So you are going to grocery shop, you are going to buy groceries, then you are going to transact the money for various purposes. You will be going to pay your bills, you will be going to buy the assets. Okay, so in this way, you are, what is this happening? The same 100 rupees or same some X amount of money is being passed from one person to another person. So velocity of money is nothing but the average number of times money passes from one hand to another during a given time period that we may calculate quarterly, half yearly, or annually. So how this velocity of the money is affected, or what are the factors that affects the velocity of the money? First, we'll see all the factors and different criteria. First, take for example, more quantity of money is there. As I've told you, supply of money and demand of money has to be equal. Otherwise, if any of this happens, then there will be a phenomenal rise that is known as inflation. Okay, inflation rises when supply of money is more than the demand of money. Then inflation rises. Okay. Now what happens? More quantity of money, if suppose it is there in the economy, then surplus is there. Then what will happen if people have more money? They will use part of money for their daily purposes, and rest of the part, what they will do? They will either buy an asset, or they will deposit in the money, or they will just keep that excess money as savings. and that money won't be released into the economy, right? So if the money is not released into the economy, then the chance of it being passed from person to person is also less, and hence velocity of money will also be very low. So more quantity of money results in less velocity of the money. Okay. Now coming to income distribution. Now coming to, suppose a rich person has a money as well as the poor person has the money. The chance of money being passed from hands of poor people will be more. Why? Because they'll be spending the money. Poor people will be spending the money to meet their daily expenses as well as to meet their daily basic minimum needs. And in this way, money in the hands of poor will be more velocicative than money in the hands of rich. This is very clear. Hope this first thing was clear. More quantity of money. And next one, money in the hands of poor will be more velocity, will have more velocity than compared to money in the hands of rich. Why? Because rich people will invest the money or they will just save that money without being released or without being passed from one person to one person. So this factor is also clear. Now coming to booming period. What is booming period? When immediately once after the economy fall, instead of that, in spite of that, economy starts to recover and it recovers in a big way. And in the booming period, what will happen? More production will take place, more services will be required, and for production to take place, more raw material will be purchased, more people will be hired in the service sector. And suppose you are purchasing raw material, with what you are purchasing with the help of money. And if you are hiring people, you will be giving salary for them. So in this phenomenon, you are passing money from your hands for purchasing raw materials as well as for hiring people. So during booming period, higher velocity of money will be there. Okay, hope is clear. Now coming to financial inclusion as well as banking penetration. Okay. Now what is that? If you have more banking penetration or more financial inclusion, then what will happen? People tend to save more in physical assets or in cash. If it is more banking penetration, what will happen? Excess money, what they will be having, they will go and deposit in the bank. And in this way, the excess money won't be passed from people to people, same as in first case. And hence, that does not hands much and it will be having low velocity. Okay. Next, coming to the next criteria. Where it says, 1 second. Okay. Coming to the next criteria. If more people use loans for purchase, suppose you are taking some 10 lakhs from the bank, okay, then you are investing that in purchasing furniture or investing that in purchasing something needed for your home. In this way, after taking loan from the bank, you are passing that money from one hand to another. Why? Because you are using it for purchase, and once money is used for purchase, it will be having higher velocity. Now coming to developed countries. First thing, in developed countries, per capita income will be more. When money is more and the developed countries will be having high lifestyle, and that too, government will be providing perfect social security. As you have seen recently, USA government, in terms of this COVID-19 also, they were giving unemployment allowance in a big way. So there, once their social security is taken care of, rest of the money they will be spending to improve their lifestyles. Okay, so in this way, in developed economies, what happens is that because of social security being taken by the governments in a big way, they'll be spending more and saving less. Or suppose, take for example, if they having more money because of big economy, even what they'll do, they'll be going for purchasing some stuff. Okay, in this way, higher velocity of money will be there in developing countries. Higher the GDP, that implies more transaction is taking place, then high velocity. And since countries are classified into developed, underdeveloped, or low developed based upon their GDP and per capita income, so higher GDP implies higher velocity. So these are the various factors out of which velocity of money is altered, and hope this various factors is clear for you. Why? Because in understanding supply of money, even this velocity of the dynamic of velocity of money has also been taken into consideration. Now coming to M1, M3. What is M1? demand deposits, the banks, plus currency with the public, that is the number of notes and the number of coins used by the public. Then other deposits with the RBI. So this is M1. Okay, now coming to M3. M3 is nothing but M1 plus, okay, M1 plus time deposits with the commercial banks. Okay. Now how this, what the hell? One second guys. I'll stop here and I'll continue with the next section.